Live, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Weebo Show. I'm your humble host, Gator. With me is one of one of only two Maker supporters, Makarov. How are you doing tonight, Makarov?
Well, I just got back from the night shift, and it's been a very interesting night.
That's good. That's good. So we are basically just hanging out. I have a few topics of discussion. If you want to discuss them, we don't have to. If you have something else that you want to talk about, you can totally
Shoot.
do that. If you want to talk to the chat and not me, I'm totally fine with that. I understand. I can get boring. I'm just kidding. I'm never boring, but it's really up to you.
Shoot, whatever you have. I will try to answer as best as I possibly can.
All right. So chat, you say? Oh boy. There, let's see who's in the chat. Just for kicks, we have, well, Alan Smith went to bed. I see that. Sam Kors is in the chat. Don is in the chat. What's on the table tonight? Well, that really depends on the atmosphere that everyone wants to present. I know there's been drama, but I'm kind of sick of drama, if you ask me.
Well, I can tell you right off the bat that as far as YouTube is concerned, all of this drama and shit, that's not really my cup of cake.
Honestly, same. I have a strawman award specifically for that purpose.
Oh,
Yes, I actually forgot to bring him back with me from college. So,
then just ship him.
yeah. Let's see what else. Chris Olson is in the chat, right-wing BDSM guy. Hello, Joshua. Tiberius Kirk. What's up, everybody? How are you doing? Anyone, please. So I should probably give everyone an update. This is the first live stream I've done since, I think it was before finals, because that was a nightmare. What else? I think I did well. I don't get my final results back until the 21st, so, you'll know then. What else? This coming week, also no Chaos 120 show, because again, it's Christmas. Come on, you don't expect me to actually do that on Christmas. Everyone go celebrate Christmas or the holidays with your fam, if you have a fam, and if not, find a fam. Oh, I see we have Ranting Monkey in the chat. Makarov, do you know who Ranting Monkey is?
Yes, I've seen a lot of his videos, and he makes a lot of good points on multiple issues.
I agree. But he I don't know if you know this, but he has a thing for midgets. And he thinks I'm a midget. So
Finger for me. Is that like a oh well, but what kind of midgets? I mean,
like the short kind.
well, that is the only kind of midgets, of course. But hey, I know a couple of midgets back home. Well, they're like, well, I don't know the American. I don't know how you measure
I think
height
it's
in America.
four
You're
foot 8 inches. Which
that means absolutely nothing to
yeah, no,
me.
because don't you guys have okay. Someone convert that for me in chat, please and thank. Uh the culture differences, they are vast. Hang on. Let's convert 4 feet 8 inches into metric.
I mean, I measured my height once, just once, in a converter.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Merca says that I am 5'8" and a lot of gibberish afterwards. Whatever the hell that means. Two to
I
three
feel
quarters
okay.
of the 4/5 bullshit, blah blah blah.
Okay,
I'm
so the
sick
way
of it.
that they do it is that there are, was it 12 inches to a foot, and then there are, oh god, I suck at math. This is why I'm a computer scientist and not a friggin', what's the correct
Hmm?
term? See, I can't even name the math types, but I just really suck at math.
I mean, when you said you are studying computer sciences, I think you mentioned several times that it's computer sciences and psychology. Is that like a double degree
That is a double
program?
major. Yeah, I am getting two different degrees in two different fields because I hate myself.
Wow. Well, hey, it's a very worthy cause.
Thank you.
It's a very worthy cause, and if nothing else, at least you'll have plenty of weird experiences to share with the rest of the world when you finish or you graduate or whatever.
I graduate in 2020, so it's a few years off. But after that, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't have a plan. Really, not that much going necessarily. I mean, I have a few ideas, but I don't. Okay. So it's 142 centimeters, I guess. That's how tall a midget is. Thank you, syntax error.
142 centimeters?
That seems low. But of course, that's a midget height, isn't it? I think.
That's a height for a 5-year-old.
Well, yeah, that's why they call them midgets, because they're short.
I mean, I know midgets that are very lean, and sometimes I feel fucking disturbed by that. I mean, when you have a midget, basically, if someone is like 140, 141, and they're like 36, 37 kilos in weight,
Hmm.
I mean, it's not only very short, it's very skinny. Very skinny. I've seen a couple of people like that when I'll go to the beach or something, and it that's just fucking disturbing. I mean, they look lean and it's healthy for them, but it's not a pretty eyesight. Not a very
Yeah.
sight. Not a very pretty
I've
sight,
I've met some
unfortunately.
really skinny people. Actually, half of my family is freaking stick thin to the point where, oh boy, it looks like they might be unhealthy. But it's honestly the way that they were genetically engineered in the womb. I don't get it. I don't know why, but the past few years they've been bulking up a little bit. Okay, so I just looked up my height in centimeters, and I'm 154 centimeters.
That's manageable.
Hmm. That's
That,
about 5'1", so that's a few inches off of midget town.
well, that's definitely very manageable.
Hmm. Oh, Dean Ward is telling me that 4'11" is and under is midget, so I got that wrong. See, that's exactly why you know I'm not a midget, because I don't know how tall you have to be to be a midget.
Of,
Obviously, not a midget.
obviously. Mm.
Hmm.
I mean, I need to tell you. I mean, the last week doing these night shifts, it's been a very illuminating experience. Apparently, it turns out that Americans, especially Americans that are holding high positions in business,
Mm.
have some very serious issues, very serious attitude problems. Apparently, they fail to understand that the business practices of the United States are incompatible legally, morally, ethically, completely incompatible with the European system. I mean, if we're going to draw some comparisons, in America, what you call legal business with pharma companies regulating the prices and then giving that price essentially to every hospital, clinic, or whatever, basically price gouging everyone. Here in Europe, it's called very simply an extortion, a monopoly,
So, are you
a
talking about the food
mafia, if
industry?
you will.
Are we talking about the farming industry and how they've kind of monopolized that in a sense?
Kind
Yeah,
of, yes. Because
that's
here,
it leaves things to be desired. Let's be real.
yeah, I mean here in Europe, I mean most of the pharmaceutical companies, I mean they are privately owned, and they produce the medicine and they're blah, distributing it to European pharmacies without any issues. The state is the one actually mandating the price and everything involved around the whole process. It needs to be approved, it needs to be tested, and then it's being released. In America, from what I've seen, like fuck the university, fuck everything. If you're certified to of becoming, I don't know, a fucking captain on a Star Trek ship, for example, you can get certified for that, and then all you have to do is just, I don't know, hypothetically, of course, speaking, hypothetically, you can just walk up to any engineer or whatever, and basically play dumb and say, well, you see, here's the official certificate stating that I'm a god emperor of the XYZ in the department of this and that for Starship Enterprise, whatever, for example. And then the guy would have absolutely no legal recourse but to take him seriously, from what I understand. From what I understand, I mean, I know some bits and pieces about the U.S. law. I'm not an expert. I admit it. I admit my ignorance in that area. So, but that's kind of the gist of it, from what I can gather. Am I getting something wrong?
Well, I will say this. There are a shit ton of regulations and there are a shit ton of ways that um, people have monopolized the industry so that there can never be. Let me use an example, actually. So
Mhm.
you know Disney, right? The famous Disney Studios, the filmmakers, the animators, and such.
Yes,
So, and do you know what a patent is?
of course.
Okay. So, at one point, patents were set to expire. I think at a point where, and I'm a little bit iffy on my history here, but from what I realized or what I've been told is that at one point patents were they could expire, and at that point that they expired, you couldn't like refile for a patent. Um,
Okay.
and then it just became in whatever it was that you were producing went into the public domain and anyone could reproduce it. Well, a few years ago, Disney decided and got it into their heads that they didn't like the idea of patents expiring. So I think what they did was they implemented some sort of system where they influenced Congress in some way that made it so that you could renew your patent every 20 years or so after it expired. And so, in doing so, you could retain rights over a property for an inordinate amount of time, effectively, you know, stunting the market in a sense. So,
This kind of reminds me. I mean, okay, in this case, it's the movie industry, but here in Europe, like there was a very recently a case in Germany for Mein Kampf, the Hitler's bestseller from the 30s.
oh boy.
Germany did absolutely everything in their power to prevent it from being published. The versions that were published up until last year or 2 years ago, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. But basically, the versions of Mein Kampf that were released were basically, being censored, edited in many ways because people that were actually read the original said that it was so horrendous and horrific that it should never be published in its original form. And so, what happened? The When World War II ended, the state of Bavaria decided that they would basically take all of the authorship rights from Hitler and basically write these ownership rights, the authorship rights of the book to themselves as a federal state inside Germany. And they decided that they would keep it locked up for 70 years. 70 years, but after these 70 years, they would be obligated to release them. And then afterwards in 2013 or 2014, they, I believe, they attempted to extend the said the said protection by basically adding these 70 years. They would add Hitler's age, basically, since he was the author, and it's a standard practice that when an author creates their book, usually when they die, the authorship rights to that book remain in the domain of whichever state or whatever, wherever he or she wrote it,
Mm-hmm.
for 70 years plus the age that they were when they died. They attempted to do the same thing with Mein Kampf, but they failed. They failed spectacularly, and in 2015 or 2016, they decided to release the full uncensored version of Mein Kampf. The only, with a small stipulation, very, very small stipulation, they decided that the academics and literary scientists would just, you know, write in, they would write in their comments and notes on why is this a bad book. Like literally, they took the book, and on each and every page, they would basically make small comments on it. Well, not in the text itself, but in the footer, or
I mean, like
like an,
annotations.
like an
Well, not
annotation. Yes,
annotations, but like you're saying
exactly.
footnotes that basically further clarify what.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Gotcha.
Footnotes.
Okay.
They would basically write in footnotes, basically describing to the people why is this book so bad, because like basically they wanted to discredit Hitler as a writer.
Hmm.
Like, do you know how stupid that is? This is like discrediting, I don't know, if I wanted to discredit Roosevelt as a president by simply taking one of his books 80 years later, or 70 or 80 years later, and basically writing my own footnotes on why was he a bad person, or why were some of his measures wrong in my personal opinion, or why did he did this wrong, how was this supposed to be written, etc. Like, in my opinion, it's just stupid. Like, you're not going to you will accomplish nothing, and people will look at you and think you're fucking retarded.
Hmm.
At least in my opinion.
I got you. Actually, I wanna make a correction to what I said about the patents. Scribe has said in chat most patents have a 20-year life. Latest
Mhm.
legislation was 1995. I think you're discussing copyright laws, which have a 100-year term. Yes,
Yes, yes,
thank you.
yes, yes,
That's what
yes.
I was referring to. I don't know why I said patents. I did mean copyright laws. I fucked up the terminology, I guess, for some reason in my head.
That's
I do
okay.
that quite often, which is why I script my videos because I can't string two words together for the life of me on a whim.
I came back straight for the night shift to do this live stream. So if I don't know, if I'm a little bit incoherent or stuff, I
Oh, you
mean,
know, you're totally fine.
don't.
I'm equally as incoherent, and we'll just be incoherent, babbling baboons together.
Well, in that case, we will correct each other throughout the course of this lunacy.
I do have a question. Actually, one more comment about the whole Mein Kampf thing. Uh, I will
Mhm.
say this in my high school, and I went to a public high school in the middle of the Midwest, and the high schools are not, in my experience at least, and I only went to one of them, so don't take my word for it. But the high school that I went to wasn't the most necessarily liberal one, but we did have like three copies of Mein Kampf in the public library of the school. So it's I guess it's not that much of a censored book if it's being shown to uh, high schoolers.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, me and my friends would go there during lunch and we'd hang out in the library. And when I discovered that this was the case, I'd take the book down from the shelf and I'd start reading it to them just to piss them off. I was a, I was a little shit back in the day.
Well,
Not gonna.
that was a very good way to make for some very bad enemies.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I
But
will say this.
you're a
Sorry,
a little demon.
just a tad, just a tad. I think I've always been that way though.
Then you were a demon. Then you were a demon from the very early ages, but just a tad, just a little bit, just a bit.
Oh yeah. So I will say this because we were talking about Hitler, right? And that's always a fun topic to talk about.
Of course.
Um, I was talking with my family a few months ago, and they mentioned that there was this new documentary on the History Channel. Because, the History Channel is the place where you should get all of your history facts.
Absolutely. Always 100% of the time. I mean, History Channel is so educational. I mean, hey, I watch fucking Duck Dynasty, Pawn Shop Stars.
Oh my God.
Fucking hell. I mean, this is so historically accurate.
Yeah, so
So
they
much
were,
action in my
yeah,
life. I mean, hey.
They were watching it, and there's this TV show that were telling me about. It's called Hunting Hitler. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what's it about? And it's about apparently the conspiracy theory, and they were very serious about it, addressing it in a way that they thought it was legitimate. It's basically the theory that Hitler survived the bunker and did not kill himself in the bunker and went on to live a long, happy life in some other country that wasn't uh, Germany or Austria, I guess. I can't remember where it was he went because I've actually never seen it. I just remember them telling me enthusiastically, Hitler survived. Hitler's Hitler was in the middle of some other place. That skull of his that they found,
Yeah.
it's not actually his.
I mean, there are a lot of conspiracy theories floating around that, around that theme. I mean, literally, I mean, technically speaking, I mean, they never found his body. They never found his body. The Russians actually took, I think it was a piece of skull, and they displayed it in Moscow in one of these fancy museums that they have about World War II. And then when they did the DNA test, I think 10 or 11 years ago, it was found out that the DNA fragments on the skull actually don't belong to Hitler.
Oh boy.
It, that's not Hitler, that it was a 20 something year old woman from whomever they
Hmm.
took this from. So his body was never found or recovered, technically speaking.
So
They,
obviously must have survived? Question mark.
well, I'm I'm fairly confident that he is dead because at the time, if you look at the whole thing historically, Stalin wanted an ideological weapon. He wanted to basically remove Hitler from the picture. It was the end of World War II. Everyone was sick and tired of the war.
Hmm.
He wanted to just basically take him out of the picture completely so that he doesn't have to bother with, well, inconvenient truths like, I don't know, making deals with the Nazis prior to the World War II. Maybe he will go to the Nuremberg, to the trials, and basically sing to the rest of the world how they did things, why would they do it. So Hitler was much more he was much more worth to him dead than alive. So, and in order to basically make sure that the place where supposedly Hitler's last stand was, his bunker,
Hmm.
where all of his closest aides gathered, well, some of them, like according to some of the declassified documents, the NKVD actually took the real bodies from Hitler, his wife, from Goebbels, his wife, along with their children that they poisoned themselves. They took all of them, they burnt them, they burnt them completely, and then they stored the ashes in several boxes that they buried somewhere in central Germany. Somewhere in central or eastern Germany, they buried them somewhere there. And then after the process of de-Stalinization, when Stalin was completely gone, then when Khrushchev came, he supposedly ordered the Secret Service to exhume them and to basically scatter their remains in, I think it was in Elbe, the river Elbe, I think, but I'm not sure.
Honestly, I do love good conspiracy theories. So, and if and like, and no one actually in, I don't
Well,
know.
I also enjoy a very good conspiracy theory, especially if it's very compelling and you can actually you actually have, I don't know, some very good, well informed facts and opinions here and there.
Like, if you ever have a discussion with a flat earther, oh my gosh.
Well, that's kind of unfair because it's always one-sided. I mean, there is no way they can win. This is a no-win scenario for them.
I feel
It
like
just doesn't happen.
you unintentionally made that pun. Did you intend to make the one-sided pun because flat Earth?
Yeah, well, of course.
That was good, but um, no, there are some really compelling conspiracy theories. I will say that. And then there are some really dumb ones, like the alien guy.
Can you be more specific? The
So you
alien
know
guy.
that meme of that guy with the crazy hair? That's he's from Ancient Aliens, and he's the one who. Here, let me see if I can find a picture of him. But basically, and I've only ever seen a few episodes of Ancient Aliens.
Hmm.
He's some sort of like fancy doctor guy, I think, who he was a meme. Oh, I
Hmm.
found it. Okay. I will broadcast this to everybody so that you all know what I'm talking about. I'm not crazy, I swear. Hang on. Just a sec. Do do do.
Just a moment.
Application window. There we go. You see that one? That guy.
Hold on.
Is he should be on your screen. The Google Meet
Aha, that
window.
guy.
Yeah, that meme. He's
I get it.
that
I
crazy guy with the crazy hair.
yeah, I get it. Yeah, I've seen it a few times.
Yep. Nope. He's does he wear a headband? Because I feel like he wears a headband. He probably does. Anyway.
This looks like a failed attempt at actually installing. What the fuck is this?
It's the Ancient Aliens guy.
I know that he's an ancient aliens guy, but I
I
mean,
think he does that
I've
to his
seen
hair.
fucked up hairstyles all across the board. I mean, a feminazi with 365 different colors and shades of colors has more purpose and sense than this. The fuck is that? I mean, like, is this haircut deliberately
I think I
like?
know why he
Oh,
does that.
I get it now. I get it now.
Get it?
This haircut has been made in such a way that if he needs a bitch slap, he doesn't need to go to the cheek. He can straight go to his fucking forehead because his forehead has been fucking designed and obviously conveniently made, for a much more realistic bitch slap. Or if you want to just knock him out with a fist.
I actually was gonna say it's designed to make him look a little bit like uh, Albert Einstein because Albert Einstein had the crazy hair as well, and
Right.
everyone takes Albert Einstein seriously now. So obviously, in like the next 100 years, we're gonna take this guy seriously too.
Oh well, who knows?
Probably. But yeah, no, he's my favorite meme. He's a classic.
Actually, I know that there is the show called Ancient Aliens, but I never seen a single episode from that.
I've seen like two, and they were oh, let's just say they were a special type of nonsense. But like the type you like to read about in fiction.
Mm-hmm. I get it.
Hmm. I should prob. Oh, that would be fun if I did an entire video on an Ancient Aliens episode.
Actually, that would be very smart.
It, it
Very
would
smart.
because it's very easy to tear apart, and all I got to do is look at the archaeology records.
Yeah.
Very easy because it's all about how you interpret the archaeology records. To be honest. Not to mention, the way that you interpret ancient texts can adjust vastly depending on the interpreter, for one. I mean, um, I'm taking ancient Greek right now,
Mhm.
so there are many different ways that you can interpret a single sentence, and it's honestly it's the most frustrating thing ever because you think you get the right answer and then you get a
Mhm.
different answer, or you check it against another answer and it's different, but your teacher says it's right. So you're like, okay, so how am I supposed to learn anything? But yeah, no, it's
Back in my back in my university, I used to have teachers. I mean, it was a technical university,
mhm.
but the teachers, like in some of the courses, like I don't know, graphic design or graphic tools, for example, we had like the course when you literally translate it into English, it's called graphic tools, one, two, and three for semesters one, two, and three. And essentially you would dig deeper into, into Adobe tools like Photoshop, Illustrator, various other Adobe tools later on, how to integrate them with your website, how to do, various stuff with it. Basically an all over tutorial, if you will. And at the very end, after, like, you could take the exam, or you can actually make something make something workable. You present it before everyone, if it and you get a grade. You get a grade from the presentation, a grade from the work, and then your overall score is basically assessed based on your previous performance. Now, teachers in that particular field, I don't know why, but every single time when you do something, like you explain absolutely everything to them, and then they come to you and they ask you, like, literally the stupidest possible question that they can pull out of their asshole. Like, but Mr. X, Y, and Z, but what is the whole purpose of this? Can you please give us, some kind of a meaning behind all of that? I mean, what the fuck was I explaining to you for the past 15 minutes?
Oh, I actually
Like, are
have a
you
story.
fucking kidding me? I was explaining to you every single time, over and over again. How did I do it? Why did I do it this way? I explained to you the whole concept.
I can
So what
relate.
else? What else do you want from me? Like,
You actually just reminded me of every single arts and humanities class I've ever taken. So any class I've taken with like an emphasis on theater interpretation, or every class I've taken with regards to art interpretation, or every class I've ever taken that was maybe an English class where I had to write a deeper meaning thesis on what exactly this text meant. Oh my gosh, because they're such easy classes because all you have to do is take a single sentence and decipher a deeper meaning into it. And because each meaning is so subjective,
mm-hmm,
it's it's very easy to get the right answer because there is no necessarily there's no there is not really a right answer that you can, or a wrong answer that you could give to whatever question it is that's being asked. So, for
mm-hmm,
instance, I was doing a lighting plot scheme for Hamlet. I think this was 2 years ago, because my school was putting on Hamlet, and they wanted me to explain exactly why I chose the lighting scheme that I did. And if you don't know, um, they'd use typically they use three different types of light. They use a left light, a right light, and then a back light.
yeah,
And this is basically meant to kind of emphasize the actors on the stage. And when they use a front light and a back light, the two front lights are usually a red and a blue of some sort, like a warm and a cool color. And then the back light is usually like a just an extra color, whatever it is that you want to put in there. So um, they have you choose a type of lighting, and then they have you explain exactly why it is you chose that type of lighting. And you can't just say, oh, I chose it because whatever. You have
yeah,
to give them a reason, like, oh, I chose rose gold because I wanted this lighting to reflect the warm and fuzziness of the scene. Or I chose, and I actually
yeah.
went the weird way and I chose green, and green on stage kind of makes you look a little bit monstery in a sense. It makes you look a
Kind,
little peaky, sick.
kind of, yeah, yeah. I see.
It discolors you essentially, and it makes you look weird. So I said, I'm going to choose green for the ghost scene because the ghost scene is freaky as hell, and someone's dead, so why not? It's the middle of the night. Hamlet is approached by his dead father in the ghost form. It'll fit.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, you have to come up with a bullshit explanation. And nothing is necessarily wrong unless, of course, you just say, oh, this is this because this, and you don't give it like a bullshit explanation. It's crazy, honestly.
I mean, my mentor gave me a C. I mean, in our university system, we actually have, grades, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They actually give you the grades. One is the failing grade from 2 to 5. It's like the with the passing grade mark. I don't know how you call it in the States, but like he gave me a C for a written part. So not the presentation, the written part, because it lacked perspective. Lacked
What?
perspective. Are you fucking kidding me? Lacked perspective.
Oh boy.
Perspective of what? Like I was writing a thesis on the ERP and CRM systems used in the today's business world, basically in the IT and in the business world, and how it progressed basically from 1990, basically from the late 1990s, when the first databases were being created, and how was it all forged and connected, stuff like that. It was a very, very in-depth analysis. And the problem with this whole research, the challenge was finding the right sources. Because in the IT, especially if it's the field of databases or these online systems, there is very little to nothing, very, very little to nothing that you can find online on these specific issues. And he told me from the very beginning, like, I'm looking for specific cases and issues regarding that particular subject. I don't want it to be long-winded. I don't want you to go around the topic to talk about IT in general. I want this, and exactly as I laid it out for you. Like, it was a huge struggle.
Oh my
It
god.
was a huge struggle, and he, like, basically in the end, he barely accepted the thesis, that it kind of wasn't good enough, that he was expecting some kind of a fucking bombshell. I mean, literally, I was able to find only, I think it was 7 or 8 that were actual literary publications talking on the subject. And these publications, like, each of them would have, I don't know, one of them had like around 380 pages, the other had like maybe 800, 850. But of this whole set of books, each and every one of them dedicated maybe, I don't know, a few pages.
Oh boy.
Maybe only a few pages, to the issue at hand. And since I can't use essentially, the same sentences or the same quotations or the
Yeah.
same citations from, I mean, it can be a same citation, but it can only come from a single book. You can't reference, like, I don't know, this is the citation, and these are like the 5 or 6 books basically containing that opinion or this and that. You can't do that.
You can't cross-reference and
Yeah,
then go
you
from
can't cross-reference it, unfortunately.
there. I I kind of relate. Um, I actually had a professor this semester that gives us key terms lists of things that she wants us to know about before she gives us a test. And her tests, oh, those are a joke. That's a separate issue. But on the key terms lists, I have so many issues with it. But like beyond just the fact that she repeats a lot of the terms that are on this list, not once, but maybe like twice, and it's like 90 terms long, so that's a lot of waste of space. But the biggest issue that I have with her terms list is that she'll give us a term, and then we'll have to like know about it, and she'll give us like really, really just random terms that we talked about in class maybe once. So one time I
Mhm.
got avocado on the terms list. I'm like, what the fuck does
Huh?
avocado have to do with human cultures? And then I had someone explain it to me, and they're like, oh yeah, she mentioned it a little bit in class that one day, like 2 weeks ago, maybe, about how every culture has a different meaning for avocado. And I'm like, okay, so why the fuck does this matter to anything? Another thing that she mentioned was the swoosh, which the only reason I figured out what that was is because she also had Nike right below it. And I'm like, the Nike
Mhm.
swoosh. Okay, so you want us to define the swoosh. What?
The swoosh.
The swoosh. Because you know the Nike swoosh, it's the little check mark.
Yes,
Yeah.
of
I
course.
was it honestly, I think she's just doing that to feel a little bit more relevant because her class isn't at all. It's one of those classes that's a social justice class, honestly.
Which one? Can you repeat, please?
So it's called Human Cultures, and it's
Uh-huh.
a PPD credit, and it's a requirement to graduate. And what PPD stands for is essentially power, privilege, and diversity. Exactly. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
that's
very
exactly what I was talking to you about before the stream.
interesting. We were
Exactly
talking about
that. Like when I'm sitting here listening to this, I mean, diversity points,
that.
safe spaces,
Oh my God.
trigger warnings, whiplash. What's next?
Oh, I could go.
Brownie points for the most oppressed of the year.
Oh, I have so many horror stories. If
I
you'd like to
mean,
hear them.
holy fucking shit. I mean, this is very simple logic. Very simple logic. I mean, in America, I mean, for centuries, like you proclaim to be the land of the free,
Hmm.
but in order, to actually be the land of the free, since people are so fucking stupid and so fucking retarded, every single point literally needs to be basically written into the constitution or the legislation because people are so stupid that they fail to understand the simple concept of human interaction, of
Just
common courtesy. I mean, today, right before I left, I had a case, with my colleague. I mean, she came in, she's from the US,
yeah.
and she failed. She fucking failed in providing not just me, everyone, in the room with basic courtesy of saying good morning. And then I come to her to basically, you know, do the closing duties for the stuff that we're doing. And she basically then is after from that point on, like she is unchained, completely unhinged, saying like how am I not considerate towards her because it's early morning, 6 in the morning, like here I am. Well, right now it's 8:13, but like how am I so inconsiderate that that when people come, in the early morning, they need to have their own me time, that they need time to basically make themselves a coffee, tea, get some regular poison, or maybe have a breakfast or something like that at work. Like that, I should be more considerate. You know what I said to her?
Hmm.
I said to her, well, I'm a douchebag. I never cared about anyone or anything, and I most probably never will. So I don't give a shit. You know what happened then?
What?
She started tearing up, stood up, and ran to the fucking bathroom.
Oh my God.
I mean, she says that, she is having some health problems, but it looked so fake, so fucking stupid that, I mean, you guys have some serious issues, very serious issues, and unfortunately, the way I see it, I mean, you're losing control. You're losing control over the whole situation from where I'm sitting. It's,
So I will say this. I won't. I There are certain examples of the United States kind of losing control of, you know, the idea of, you know, free speech,
yeah.
and people kind of taking it by the reins and going off with it. And then there are certain examples of riots, and let's be real that there are quite a few this year that.
I mean, these riots that are happening, I mean, let's think about this honestly.
Mhm.
How important are like people like Milo Yiannopoulos and Ben Shapiro to
Uh,
anyone?
Well, I mean
for
that
anyone,
depends.
because I mean, okay, let's look at this objectively.
Hmm.
These guys have zero political power. They hold no, they are not in any office. They control no one. They have an audience, a very dedicated audience. If they are posing a threat to anyone, they like the only things that they're posing a threat to are what? Dustbins, termites, and microscopic organisms that actually have more cells alive in their whatever than fucking feminazis.
Well, actually, I can
Like
explain this. The danger not doesn't lie in the power that they have, to affect change, but it lies in the power that they have to affect a person's mind. And if your argument isn't strong enough to stand up to the likes of Milo Yiannopoulos or Ben Shapiro in certain aspects that are super important to you, then that means that your argument isn't necessarily strong enough. And you should probably come back when you have done that crucial research and that crucial, mind searching for the right argument, the one that, kind of cuts deep and makes you stand out from the rest of the people who are just screaming Nazi, screaming white supremacist, screaming racist at a person because they have nothing else that, they can come at them with. And
exactly,
yeah, the problem doesn't lie in the fact that we let everyone say what they want to say. The problem lies in the fact that we have created a culture of people who can't think for themselves, who basically rely on other people to tell them what to think. And I think that's pathetic, honestly. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If you cannot form your own opinions based on your own information, you don't even bother. Not in all aspects,
exactly,
because I will, I do realize that to do that with every opinion that you have would be just a huge annoyance. But the things that matter, the things that you're going to get that upset about, if you don't take the time to actually properly formulate your own opinion on the matter, listen to the other side, and maybe take some time to actually counter that argument instead of just shutting it down before it even gets started, then you have no place in the political sphere. And yeah, sure, you may have rights, but if you're going to use them like that, then you're going to make yourself look like a fool. And the thing is,
exactly,
those people have been immortalized online for all to see because they have exhibited the worst example of what it means to be, you know, a human and a citizen of the United States. I mean, you can say whatever the hell you want, sure. The ramifications come when you make yourself look like an idiot or an asshole or what have
and
you.
I mean, literally at this point, if this is the game that they want to play, if
Yeah.
this is the game that they want to play, then I see absolutely no reason why not just, go ahead and say, okay, let's do it. Let's fucking do it. Like, let's see how many of you are going to actually, lift a finger. Lift a fucking finger against, I don't know, a SWAT guy or anyone protecting them because they all have such a fucking wish. I mean, if this is necessary for people to die in order to accomplish something, then that's the price that everyone should be willing to pay. If that's the fucking case, because with these guys, the more appeasing you are towards them, the more violent they are. If you want to talk to them, they're even more violent. If you like whatever you do, it only gets worse. It only gets worse. And history has proven again and again and again that if you want to make a fundamental change in the society, there's going to be a lot of resistance to it. And this thing that we have right now for the past maybe 20 years, that we live in an unparalleled time of peace. There are no global conflicts, no global shortages of food, water, deprivation on a global scale. It's a thing of the past, you can even say at this point. Like
So,
nothing, everything that happened. I'm sorry. Can I
yeah,
just finish? The point that I'm trying to make here is that this way of things that we have right now, to resolve these types of conflicts through peaceful means, it's a relatively new concept. If you look at the entirety of human history, if anyone wanted to make any kind of a change, it would involve conflicts. wars on an unprecedented scale,
Mhm.
and thousands and millions of people would have to die on one side or another to basically accomplish something that they envisioned for a couple of individuals, basically.
Yes. Okay, so to speak on that kind of, because you were talking real heavy stuff about how the world is doomed for, well, not doomed, but
No,
going
no, it's
towards
not
this.
doom. No, I have a very positive outlook on the
Yeah, no,
world.
I understand. I'm just saying, there are a few simple things that you have to kind of be aware of when approaching things from a perspective of, I want to achieve this goal of, a peaceful society that can work together. So there are some things that you need to do in order to do that. One of those things is
Yeah,
you have to approach a subject as if you're talking to a layman. And I'm not saying approach it from the position of you're talking to the lowest common denominator. No, do
naturally.
not do that because if you speak to a person like they are an idiot, they're going to see it as condescension. No, what you do to a person to get them to listen to you is you speak to them as if you are on the same level as they are, as if you are both friends. You get them to empathize with you in a sense, because then they see you as human and they're more prone to listen to you. The other thing that you have to be willing to do, and this is the one that people struggle with the most, is you have to be willing to make some compromise in certain areas. It's what I don't know how familiar you are with American history, specifically around the Revolutionary times, but the founding fathers, they made a lot of compromises with each other just to get to the point that we're at, because they could definitely foresee certain issues that would occur if the way that the government was formed wasn't formed in this particular way. So the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, they compromised with the whole two-house
Yeah.
system. So that's why we have the House of Reps and the Senate.
The way I see it, the founding fathers of the United States, they are very few rare examples of people actually using their brains when establishing a country and actually thinking that far ahead. This is very careful and precise planning that they had.
Honestly, it's probably the most impressive planning that I've ever come across in my years of study. Because, and how do I put this? Yes, you're right. The amount of planning that went into it, what they were approaching with it required a lot of foresight that spanned way into the future. I mean, you see that with the Constitution. You see that, well, actually, the Constitution stemmed from the fact that they had lived through certain experiences that they did not enjoy.
Yeah,
So the First Amendment stemmed from the fact that they didn't like it when a god emperor king person got to decide what they said, whether it was good or bad or not, or an executable offense, because that had been the precedent set prior to that, in a sense, in certain nations. The right to bear arms, that came from the desire and the need to form a well-armed militia to basically counter any government opposition that might incur, because they had faced off against government opposition that sought to destroy any revolution, any, you know, uh, protection of their own self interests. There were a whole bunch of things that stemmed both from foresight, but also um, presight. I don't think that's the correct term, but hindsight. There we go,
that's
hindsight.
right.
So they were looking not just at what could be the case in the future, but they were looking to the past as well to kind of formulate a kind of government that would work for everyone necessarily, which is where they got the Constitution from, but where they got the form of government in the way that it was, well, the Bill of Rights, I'm sorry, the Bill of Rights, not just the Constitution, but the Constitution as a whole is a compilation of hindsight and foresight. Sorry, this is a very long-winded explanation, and I know I'm just kind of like running us slow on time here because it's nearly 1:30 in the morning here, but I do want to iterate that they were very smart men and they knew what they were doing, and I'm actually very grateful for that foresight and hindsight. That I'll just leave it at that because I do think I have run this on long enough.
Okay, I agree. I agree. We can move on.
Oh no, I have a tendency to ramble. That's the thing.
It's okay. I mean, I came back from the night shift. I'm recuperating just fine. I can do this for a few more hours.
I gotcha.
It's totally fine with me. I know it's 1:30 in your at your place, but well,
Mhm.
for me right
I
now it's
can go
early.
on until around 2 in the morning, and then I do have to hit the sack because I gotta wake up early tomorrow morning and film a video.
Hmm.
Mhm.
That's good. That's good. I mean, I could briefly touch maybe on the issue of this migration crisis currently going on in Europe.
That does sound interesting.
Croatia was one of the countries where most of these migrants actually went through. And I can tell you at this point right now, the whole thing, like if you hear like the Eurosceptics and the people on the far right in these various Western European countries basically saying that it's a huge issue, that something needs to be done immediately. I mean, they're blowing it completely out of proportion. Completely out of proportion because the crisis that they're mentioning doesn't exist anymore. 2 years ago, when this whole thing broke out, in October or November of 2015, the leaders of the so-called Balkan route that the refugees were taking in order to go into the other EU countries, specifically to Germany, they all met up and they agreed that they would shut it down at the point of entry, which was in Greece. Greece, Macedonia, Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, and Austria. All of them gathered together and they decided that they would shut it down. They made the agreement, and that agreement is still in place. From that point on, the only migrants that are currently in Europe right now are the ones that already got in 2 years ago. The only ones that could potentially still pose a threat, but they are not a fucking threat because if they were, a lot of shit would go down by now in Serbia. A lot of them got ended up trapped in Serbia. I don't know what the specific number is. There were a lot of them. And in Belgrade, for example, they decided to make these small shanty towns basically. Like that Calais jungle, they decided to basically do some version of that in Belgrade, but it's not going very well because after all, Serbia and the Slavic countries, well, if there is one thing that we do right, it's policing.
Ha,
Policing and implementing ruthless force if if we decide to, at least the police force.
I will say Poland is. I think Poland's got it right, and I'm gonna leave it at that.
Well, as far as Poland is concerned, I mean, what the fuck are they complaining about? Like right
But
now, at this point, like right now, what are they complaining about? Like I'm sitting here and I'm watching on the news. Well, they are protesting. Okay, what are they protesting? They are protesting Muslims. Like like this is a completely confusing situation for me because they took in no one. There are no Muslims. Zero.
well,
None of them came into Poland. None of them stayed in Poland, and they're still complaining about the Muslims. They have nothing to complain about. The European Union, contrary to the popular belief of many YouTubers that I've seen and heard, all of the powers that the European Union has, these powers are being delegated by the member states. The European Union has as much power as these member states are going to give it to the Union. If a member state decides go fuck yourself, we're not going to take them in. What are they going to do? Nothing, because they don't have the mechanisms to do it. They can put sanctions on the countries, but if there are even there's even a handful of countries that disagrees with these sanctions, it means jack shit. They can't implement them. They can't punish anyone for the naughty behavior. And the European Union most certainly, absolutely can't influence the changes of the culture cultures that are happening in individual member states. French are French, and they have been French ever since they entered the European Union. They are not Germans. They are not Africans. They're not Middle Easterners. They're not Arabs. They're still fucking French. The same thing applies for the Germans. Do you know what is the only difference? The only difference here is that Germany has, let's call it an economic upper hand when it comes to crafting EU policy, but still the rules are the same. Without any effort, all of these countries that actually have any kind of an objection to the policies of the European Union, so Poland, Slovakia, the Czech Republic, Austria, the Baltic states, Finland even objected to, Finland even had a case when some of the migrants, like, listen to this, they decided, to basically circumnavigate the whole route, basically avoid the Balkan route, avoid the mainstream routes, go through Russia, drive with cars, trucks, bikes, whatever they can get their hands on, these migrants or the refugees, whatever. And they will drive themselves all the way to the north, to Finland and Norway, so that they can enter the European Union or the economic area from these countries. There were cases like this. It was on the newspapers. I was laughing my ass off when I heard that.
Oh.
I was literally laughing my ass off. Like from the southern border of European Russia to fucking northern border, you have over 3,000 kilometers. 3,000 fucking kilometers. From Greece to Austria and Germany, you have like 1,300 kilometers, 1,400 kilometers. Like this only, like the only proof, well, not the proof, but sorry for my English.
Oh, you're fine.
I'm a bit tired. Just here there. This only serves as a testament to the human will. If someone is determined to get in, you can set up soldiers, you can put up barbed wire, fence, concrete walls, you can do whatever the fuck you want. But if these people are determined to get in, there is no way you can stop them. Like like what they did. These guys that actually went for fucking Russia to get into Finland and Norway. Like that only shows that these people are determined. They're fucking determined.
So, I've actually been watching chat a little bit during your big speech about the EU and Poland and the European nations and such, and a few of the comments that I want to kind of ask you about. One of
I'm
them
listening.
was, let's see, festering wound, and you're echoing a little bit there on your end. Do you wanna,
Can you repeat, please?
hang on. So festering wound said Germany is trying to force them to take them in. I'm pretty sure he's talking about Poland.
Yes.
Right.
Germany is, that is correct.
And you were responding with, well, they can't necessarily force them in any which way.
Exactly, because if this were the case, if this were the case right now, if Germany had such an intent, I mean, Germans are a type of a people, a nation that are very easy to predict, their actions. If they wanted to, I mean, currently there are, I think, 2.3 million of them in Germany right now. If Germany decided on its own, without any kind of approval from anyone, that they wanted to basically redistribute these refugees to other European countries without their consent, without the written approval, there is no union, no organization, no government that will accept it. Not now, not in a million years. They can have an economy worth 900 trillion euros. There is no, they can have an economic might like 10 times greater than the whole world's GDP. It still means jack shit. They can't enforce, this is one of these reasons why Germans are upset now, because they were used to this economic hegemony that they held over Europe for the past maybe 10 years, 10 to 15 years. Because essentially, What they always could have done was, well, you don't want to accept our proposals. Well, what we're going to do, well, simply we're going to make a deal with the Russians, we're going to make a deal with the Chinese and the Japanese. We're going to ship our jobs over there along with the economy and everything, and we will keep, you know, raking up the money, and you won't have any of our products. And that's essentially how it used to work. How it used to work. But then what happened is in 2004, starting in 2004, they accepted like a lot of new countries into the European Union, notably the aforementioned Poland, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic. And there was a lot of resistance from the Western governments, to fully integrate them into the European Union, to allow them entrance into the Schengen, into the Eurozone, because of various reasons. Each and every single country had one of their had a lot of reasons, basically a whole list on why they wouldn't want to take them in. They had to in the end. And basically, when they were taken into the Schengen area, which is this borderless area, there are no more border controls or anything between the EU member states that are in the Schengen area. Essentially, what happened for these economies is that they actually started booming, in particular, Czech Republic and Poland. They started booming, and now they are exporting everywhere. They're export motherfuckers in the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
They're expanding absolutely everywhere.
So, kind of want to ask some follow-up. I've heard talk, and Fester Moon mentioned it in chat because I guess he seemed a little bit triggered by the conversation of the EU. He said he mentioned that the EU was intent on building a sort of military power of some sort. See, here's the thing. I don't feel necessarily that comfortable talking about the EU subject to the point where I have formed a substantial opinion
It's
on
fine. Look,
it because I don't follow it.
listen, there are very few people. Now, here's the deal. Now, here's the deal with the European Union.
Mhm.
It is a very complicated subject for everyone. Absolutely everyone. When I used to go
That's what
into
I've heard.
when I used to go to high school, Croatia at the time was, in full gear for joining the European Union. And since I had a privilege of actually going to a private high school, they decided that it would be like it was a high school of economics, a private high school of economics, and they decided that they would tailor the curriculum, the high school curriculum, right before I went in there, with the EU standards and how to basically to do stuff within the EU framework. So I've had like a dubious privilege of actually learning all of that in high school in several classes. I mean, it is hideously complex. There are a lot of exceptions to plenty of established rules. For these reasons, Germany, if they wanted to dump all of these refugees on someone else, they can't do it. It's not going to happen, not now, not in a million years. And even the European Union, technically speaking, doesn't have that kind of an authorization to make that kind of a decision
Okay,
because of the sovereignty issue. You
gotcha.
can't, because the European Union is not a nation. It's not a nation. It's not a state. It doesn't have any. It doesn't have any well-established parameters that it can be defined as a fully functional state, because it's not.
So, are you saying that without the the sovereignty that that other nation states have, it can't necessarily form an army of a magnitude that would actually make some form of a difference?
Currently, what they're saying right now, like they want to form an army, but the fact is the European Union already has an army of its own. It's been having it for the past for a decade now. It already exists. It's called EUFOR. Basically, it's a task force. Well, it's a task force basically where the military personnel of various member states, they sign special contracts, they go to various missions that the European Union, or in this case EUFOR, is sending them. But they are not saluting, like this isn't like when you're joining the normal army like that you're singing the anthem, that you're actually, hoisting the EU flag. That doesn't exist. You're still a soldier of the army that sent you in the first place. So you're working for the European Union, like you're on their payroll. But the army that you're serving with is not the EU army because it doesn't exist.
Gotcha. Okay. Um.
No, the issue with the European Union, like it's hideously complex. There are a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of complex issues, and some of the people on YouTube are taking it too gallantly.
So
They're
I
oversimplifying the issue. Okay, sorry.
no, I was
I'll
just
stop
gonna
now.
ask you, because you mentioned YouTubers. I was gonna ask you, which YouTubers do you find provide a substantial and adequate explanation of the EU in a way that is comprehensive and easy to understand for a layman such as myself? And if you want, can you link them too, just so I can
I
uh,
mean, I don't want to. I mean,
check?
I don't want to basically, call them out or anything. I'm not saying that the information is wrong.
No,
I'm
no,
saying that
no. I meant like, who do you think has it right in terms of their arguments and what it is that they know about the EU?
currently I didn't find anyone. I
Oh,
mean, there are very few people that actually tackle the issue, with a relative degree of accuracy. Like there is CGP Grey. He did two videos on the European Union. The first one was dedicated, to the EU and how it functions. The second one was dedicated, the European Union in relation to Brexit. And the information that he has put out there is very accurate. It's very informative, and I can say that like these are the two videos that are definitely worth watching, in my opinion.
gotcha.
The
Can you send them to me later at some point just so I can like watch them on my spare time? Because I do like learning about things that I don't know anything about because I feel like it opens up my horizons a little bit. I like
then we're
hearing it from
two.
people I don't
Then
usually listen to, of
well, in that case, we're two of a kind.
course.
um, the
Just
other YouTuber, I mean, I'll just briefly mention.
mhm.
For the links, I mean, after the stream, like if you want to just hang out maybe for maybe a minute or two more.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Anyway, the other YouTuber that kind of tackles the issue but makes some wrong conclusions is Sargon of Akkad.
Mm,
I mean, I respect the guy. I really have the respect for the guy. He is tackling a lot of these, like, I mean, he's from Britain. He's from Britain, but he is devoting a lot of time, to the issues, currently going on in America, with the universities, the SJWs and stuff like that. But when it comes to Brexit, I don't know where is he getting his information from. Some of the statements that he has made are ludicrous, are
can I?
just ludicrous. Like for example,
Okay.
when he made a live stream with Thunderfoot, it was last year, maybe a few weeks before the Brexit vote. Thunderfoot asked him, like like Sargon made a comment saying that it's the European Union's end goal and objective to dissolve and basically to remove all of the sovereignty from its member states, so that it can impose its own rule on absolutely everyone. Thunderfoot asked him right now, because at the time, even today, like the UK is still in the EU, like what sovereignty did he give away? What is that sovereignty? What right? Like something.
Hmm.
And Sargon's response to this was, well, just because I can't find an example doesn't mean that it's not true. I mean, by the same token, I can say, well, I took a shit in your toilet, but I don't smell, but I don't smell anything.
Hmm.
Like it really stinks, but I don't see the shit.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're getting at. Just because you
Like you
can.
go into the room, it really stinks, but I can't find the shit. And then it walks out and he says, but where is it? Well, just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it's not true. Who knows? Maybe I wasn't even in that shitter. Maybe it could have been someone else.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand what you're talking about.
You know,
And I will say that a lot of what Sargon of Akkad does mention with regards to the EU, and like I said, I'm not an expert, so please don't take me at my word. Don't
It's all right.
ridicule me. I am but a layman.
It's
Um,
okay, not a problem.
yeah, no, what I will say is that a lot of what he says does sound like something out of a conspiracy video, but it's not everything that he says, and I can see that possibility being there. Of course, sure. I mean, like with all things, anything's possible, so long as there's nuance. But there does need to be some element of evidence. I mean, you can't just not substantiate certain claims that you're making and expect people to believe you on a whim. I do like his content, though. He does make very important content.
No, he's making a lot of important content. That is for sure. I mean, I do find his attitude and behavior towards Anita Sarkeesian a little bit questionable because what does she have to do before he's going to lift a finger against her? Because here's the deal. Here's the ultimate solution to this whole SJW problem. All of these things that they're saying, if you put them in a court of law, they lose. There is not a theoretical chance that these morons can win a
True.
lawsuit in regards to these rights, because they would have to prove that the fundamental rights granted to them by the US Constitution were being violated like for years in so many different environments, in so many
And
different spaces, and this is something that they can't prove.
yeah, they would have to provide the screenshots and evidence and stuff and provide proof that they weren't necessarily doctored in some way. They would have, it would just be a hot mess, honestly. I get it. Yeah.
Because
No,
because the way I see it right now in the media, the way it's going, because the only thing this thing can stop, the only way, is if someone or if a group of people can actually, put them on trial. Actually come approach them and say, you know what, fuck this. We're gonna go to court. We're going there and we're going to beat the ever living shit out of you there. And but the ultimate purpose, of course, is not to remove them from the discussion, not to to give out an appearance that you want to remove them basically by force. Not that, simply to level the playing field. If they want to have their own conversation about safe spaces and this, that, then fine. You can have that kind of a conversation. But what you can't do is then go to the media or have the media write their propaganda for them. Any media whatsoever, essentially.
I got you.
Level the playing field. Because if they actually were given, if they were given a stage or a platform to actually convey their ideas, they would be applauded. They would be greeted, with open arms. But if someone from, I don't know, this so-called skeptic community, if you can even call it a community,
Yeah, no,
would
it's
actually
just like
try,
a
would even try to do something like that, then you would have Antifa, you would have fucking SGWs beating people up on the streets for absolutely nothing. Like we need to equalize the playing field. It needs to be equalized, and this whole charade has to stop. Because if this is not contained, because there are plenty of nut jobs in the US, only one of them can actually, like one of them or several of them can become serial killers. They can watch these videos and say, well, yes, I completely and totally agree with this. This is the ultimate solution. And I'm so fucking stupid and degenerate that I have only a few brain cells left in my brain. But what I'm going to do, and it's going to be a very useful thing to do. I'll just get some guns and, start killing people, the SJWs, for
So
example.
I wanna talk about what you said about with regards to the SJWs and the Anita Sarkeesian, and how if they were to take someone to court, they probably wouldn't be able to win in court because the law is not necessarily on their side and they'd have to prove stuff. I will say that the courts do leave something to be desired. They don't necessarily always work out the way that you think that they should necessarily.
I
I mean,
know.
just take a look at family courts for one. There's a whole bunch of buffoonery going on in there. But for a second thing, and this is not just necessarily with the United States, but also in the
No,
UK with
I understand.
you know Count Dankula with his whole Nazi pug salute thing, right? You know that
Oh,
story?
can you repeat, please? You broke off a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Do you remember Count Dankula?
Count Dankula.
His story where he basically taught his pet pug to Nazi salute him just to piss off his girlfriend.
Ah, yes, 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 yes. I've seen that.
Yeah, no. Well, he's basically getting tried in court, and it's been a big issue. And I think I can't.
This is in the UK. This is
Yeah,
in the
this is
UK.
in the. I think it's in. Is it in Ireland? Is he Irish or is he
Scotland. In Scotland, I think.
Scotland? Okay, he's
No,
Scottish.
but here's the deal. Like, this is a very specific case to the UK court, and
Yeah.
they have the laws of their own. But I'm talking about the United States. In the
Oh, okay. So
US, like
specifically,
I'm talking about the US because whether I want to admit that or not, the trends from the United States eventually spread across the Western world
uh,
and in Europe.
yeah.
Like, this is something that's going to eventually come here. Whether it's going to take a year, two, or three, it doesn't matter. It's going to come to Europe
Well,
eventually.
I brought up UK because you were talking about Sargon of Akkad with respect to Anita Sarkeesian. I know that that
I
kind of
know. I
encompasses two
understand.
different jurisdictions in terms of legality across an entire ocean. So that's why I kind of connected it that way. But no, you're right. To a degree, the
Well,
U.S. courts do have that principle that's been set. Actually, I'm pretty sure there are a few
because
cases.
do you know why I'm saying that in the U.S. courts it would be much easier? Because here's the deal: that this is an open and shut case
Mhm,
when you think about it, because this has nothing to do with the family courts or the family law or however you call it in the U.S.
mhm.
This is one single issue, only one, and that is the right to free speech.
Yes.
These idiots are complaining, moaning, shouting, bitching, destroying stuff, beating people up because supposedly these rights, like, they never had these rights in the first place. Okay, so let's take this to the court. You sue them, you take them to the court, and then the burden of proof is to them. They must prove without a shadow of the doubt that the US government, the institutions of the government, the federal government, were deliberately and indiscriminately against these particular minorities within the past within the past 53 years of enacting the Civil Rights Act, that all of these rights that were granted to them were violated as a collective, not on a case to case basis, but as a collective. And when you present it like that in the courtroom, that's a no-win scenario for them. They can't win.
Yeah.
It's unwinnable. They would have to prove that the US government has been denying them everything, essentially,
True.
if you make that kind of a case.
No, I get what
Like, try to think try to think about that for a moment. At least that's the way I see it. The way I see it. I'm a complete and total outsider. I know about the US legal practices. I have a friend from the US. She is actually going for a PhD, for the law.
Ooh,
So
a doctor of law, a doctor lawyer.
doctor of the law, because I'm the law.
Nice. Okay, so we have about 7 minutes left before I have to go, nod off to bed. If you guys wanted to ask a question, I'm gonna open it up to chat
Yes,
and then to
by all
you.
means.
It's totally fine. As you all know, I am completely an open book, pretty much. So I'll most likely answer whatever it is you throw at me with some sarcastic, snarky answer. I don't know. I don't know about you, but Makarov, the chat is being pretty chill tonight, so you might have not have to answer anything like seriously horrible. Like I almost got a super chat and I had to read it out loud, and I think it said something along the lines of, "I, Weebo Jones, am some manner of deplorable." I forgot what it was, but I think it might have been Nazi or racist or something. But I had to
Uh,
say it essentially, which can definitely be quote mine. But you know how it is. It is what it is.
of course. I mean, if the super chat has absolutely no questions for me, then I guess I've actually educated someone.
Supposed to ask you about
Either everyone is
Soros,
completely
I guess.
stunned. Either everyone is completely stunned by the sheer stupidity of my comments, or I actually presented some information that some other people didn't. I don't know.
Um, okay, so one person is asking me to ask you about Soros, please,
Mhm.
and they asked with a please, so of course I have to ask you. Uh, I'm asking you about Soros. Thoughts, considerations, anything?
Soros. Well, before I make a fun, I just want to be sure. Excellent. Okay, George Soros. Let's talk about the guy a little bit. So he was born in 1930. The guy is 87 fucking years old. He can't even take a shit without having at least three people assisting him, let alone run intergalactic empires of
Intergalactic. Oh my gosh, that's
intergalactic empires of finance, intergalactic, like international financial
there you go.
empires, and God knows what kind of bullshit.
Intergalactic. As I was gonna say, I didn't know that we took this shit,
I mean,
universe
there are
wide.
people. I mean, I'm saying it because
You
there are
operating on
so
Mars
many
too?
people saying, Soros is absolutely behind everything that you do. The company that you're working for, you probably has some kind of connection to Soros. The company that you just bought your shake from. They used to cooperate with the second company that where this third company was located in the United States, and Soros just happens to be, one of the financiers of this third and fourth company. Like this is how ludicrous it's been. With this whole Soros thing. I'm not saying that he is not, that he's completely inert. I mean, the guy, after all, has a shit ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of money, and if he wanted to, well, he can finance anyone or fund any movement of his choice. If he wanted to instigate any kind of a right for any kind of a reason, whether if it was from the left or from the right, he's the guy with the money, with the brains, and I mean, after all, he's 87 years old. Do you seriously think that this is the guy, flying around, plotting to overtake the free world?
Well, I mean, there are people who are
I
definitely
mean, come on.
for to be honest, what I know about Soros is internet memes, and that's about it.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the whole guy was a meme, and he still is a meme. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he got famous. But I don't even know how he got famous. I for
Good
my
question.
brain.
Let's ask the
Oh,
chat.
yeah, how
So
he got famous?
someone educate
Please
me on
tell me.
this.
I'm really interested.
Okay, so let me see. Another question. Did y'all enjoy this stream? I think that's a question for everyone else, not me. What's my favorite color? I really like red. The circumference of my schlong. So
Mhm.
at least 70 inches.
70
Um,
inches mean absolutely nothing to me. What is that?
I- it's fucking huge for a schlong, let me tell you. So like if a centimeter is what, 2.5, or if there are 2.5 centimeters in an inch.
I see it. Oh, don't worry, I already did the math.
There you go.
Well, if this map is correct, then I mean, it's fine. I mean, this is just an American average. I mean, come on, let's be real. An American average of 70 inches. Well, yeah,
Circumference.
that's about right. Yes, that's about right.
Okay, so
Couple of
it's an ongoing joke that apparently I have a dick and it's about 40 feet long and now it's about 70 inches circumference wise, just because why not enhance the trap rumors that already exist?
hmm And is there any kind of truth to that conspiracy?
I plead the fifth, and the fifth is that little piece of legislature that does not let me incriminate myself if I don't want to.
Yeah, well, the Fifth Amendment is incompatible along with the other American values as it has been decreed by the EU courts.
Of
The
course.
defense is inadmissible. You will answer the question.
Oh no, it seems we're almost out of time. I'm gonna have to put that off until the next live stream that we do. Oh darn.
Exactly.
Right,
Yes.
keep your question in your pockets for the next stream, my lovely ducklings. All right, so with that, I am going to wrap up this stream. Thank you for joining me, Makarov. It was a delight and a pleasure to have you.
Yes, thank you very much for having me on. It's been really good.
Anyway, thank you, chat, for coming out, and thank you, chat, for putting up with us. And I'm going to stop the broadcast now. Adios. I'll see you when I see you guys next. Bye, bitches.
Bye bye.